Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another animation analysis video. I do want to apologize. I did say I was going to do this video, I think like last week or something like that. And the video just got away from me because I was working on other content and whatnot. But we are finally going to be taking a look at the animations for these guys just in time to sneak them in before the part 2 shenanigans finally drop for the 8th anniversary. Of course, we're going to be taking a look at Nova and Ice and GOTENKS and PICCOLO today. So many ands in there because these guys are both dual units. Of course, these are the anniversary units that are present on the current part 1 8th anniversary LR banners. I always like to call them the featured unfeatured units because they are featured on their debut banner and then eventually they will become units to be added to the unfeatured pool. But a lot of people just call them the featured unit, which is kind of funny because, you know, it's like, well, they're all the featured unit. But regardless, we're going to take a look at these animations today all the way through. And then, of course, we will go through them for the frame by frame. Now, unfortunately, I don't actually have any, like, crazy comparison video for you today because, well, unfortunately, these units tend to not get as much love when it comes to that sort of thing because they are the unfeatured featured unit, right? So we're basically just going to have to go off of the Dokkan Battle animations for these guys today. By the way, I always do like to say this in the beginning of the video. I'm not a professional or anything like that. I just feel like I have a good understanding of these Dokkan animations, how they work, what makes them good and what not, because I look at the assets all the time. So we actually have 2 super attacks for GOTENKS here, which is pretty cool. Keeping up with the theme of the GOTENKS having multiple supers depending on how much key you get. I forget the exact number. I think it's like 9 key and 12 key or 9 key and 11 key, something like that. It doesn't really matter for the sake of, you know, like how good the animation is, but it's just depending on the amount of key that you get will be a different GOTENKS super attack. The OG, before we had LRs that were able to give us multiple attacks, we had the boy GOTENKS who was cooking from day one. Anyhow, let's go ahead and jump into our detailed analysis here. So first of all, we have this very cool establishing shot of Nova and Ice standing around, which is pretty cool. It's nice that I've seen them do, even with characters who don't really have like an intro animation. It's kind of interesting because I feel like lately, excuse me, that's the smoothie that I had for breakfast. Even with units that don't have an intro animation like this, I feel like they've almost taken elements from the intro animation and kind of implemented them into super attacks, because even like the GT boys have this where they have Goku and Vegeta standing there in the beginning of one of their super attacks. And I mean, you could even say for the Boo boys, right, like when Goku and Vegeta are flying in, right, that I guess you could kind of consider sort of intro-esque. So it's interesting that they're incorporating that into a lot of different animations here to kind of give like an establishing shot. But we have them jump forward basically with Nova leading the charge and Ice teleporting away. First of all, normally I would be like, yeah, I don't really like that he just kind of changed positions immediately like that. But honestly, in like actual movement, I think that this is fine. Maybe there could have been one more pose between this and this, but honestly, because of the way that they have him move and it's honestly pretty fluid throughout, I think it looks good. Honestly, I like this in full motion. I think it looks good. It's nice to see as well, obviously, as he flies towards the camera and eventually, of course, disappears. We got these motion lines on the screen. I really like how they have Nova move, right? So obviously they have the usual like teleporting away effect, right, where they disappear, then they have the blur appear. However, they imply that he's moving up super quickly, which is cool because they have him blur up even more, right? It looks like his body stretched out, and then you can see that stretched out teleporting asset gets even more stretched and shoots up towards the sky. That is a great way to imply movement on that. I really like that. So obviously now we have Nova throw a couple of kicks and punches, nothing too impressive, and it is basically just the assets like changing, right? Let me change this to 720p. For some reason, whenever I try and slow a video down at 1080p, YouTube is just like not having it, and then when I change it to 720, it's fine. I don't know why. Anyway, though, obviously it is just basically a couple of punches and kicks, right? There is a couple of small little movements in there. You can see like he moves a little bit his body forward here, right? Which is nice to see they put those little movements in, because that does make an animation like this, right? You can see those foot moves there. An animation like this that is quick and snappy and you could just mistake for a couple PNGs moving around, those little tiny movements is what really give it a lot of life. So that is very cool to see that they implemented that in there. This, I think, is a really good transition. Sometimes I feel like I get caught off guard by Dokkan's transitions. Like, I'm looking at one scene and I'm like, whoa! But this feels like it makes sense to me because, as you can see, right? Nova's hand is actually pulled back here. However, the one thing that is weird about this is I think technically from the way that he is positioned, right? Am I correct on this? Would this be the other arm? Yeah, this would be the other arm, I believe, that would actually be pulled back. But I think you're not really like paying that close of attention to it, so obviously you're not going to really notice that. But we have this really cool shot where Nova gets more into the frame, and then we have Ice in the background. And you can actually see that Nova looks back at Ice there. It is a little bit of a weird change on the head asset there, but you don't really notice it when it's obviously in full motion like this. We have him bring his hands down to do an attack, and we have Nova teleport away, electrocuting Goku and freezing the bad boy up before we have him teleport forward. This is really cool, and obviously a nice little reference to the fact that Nova doesn't really want to fight Goku, right? He tries to convince Ice not to attack, which is pretty sick, I'm not gonna lie. Definitely a nice little detail, and tons of nice little pieces of animation here, right? Just with between the two of them talking, right? Even though there obviously isn't any audio for this in terms of like voice lines or anything like that, you can see they still have them animate the mouth flaps, which is pretty cool. I definitely like that quite a bit. Yeah, just good attention to detail, honestly. Very cool. So we have him turn around. This shot is very nice with the full turnaround and the look of disgust on his face. I quite like this, right? Realizing he's like, well, guess I gotta do it. All right. Coming to terms with it. This is a really cool effect with the orange here. I will say I do kind of wish that this one asset didn't just fade into the other one, because I like this, right? I like this little like dot effect that they have here with the sort of energy being gathered by Nova here. But then when they fade in this asset, and then especially when they just fade in the next one, I feel like it looks kind of cheap, right? Again, maybe that is how it is in the anime, so I can't necessarily give this L to Dokkan without having the original source material next to me. However, I just think they could have done it better. They could have made it actually look like the effect was growing, right? The Ki Blast, or maybe like getting sucked into the, you know, basically Buster Cannon, the Mega Man Buster Cannon that he has on his arm, right? Rather than fading it in. It kind of gives it the illusion of slow motion, but I still think that they could have done it a little bit better. Regardless, though, this is a very interesting cut. Basically going from a black screen here to then having the entire scene be there, which definitely I think looks pretty good. This is really sick, by the way. Not only is this shot cool with the energy effects, you can also see the Ice is gathering energy too. This does look pretty good, albeit I will say a little bit of the movement on here is kind of choppy, right? Going from this to this is a little bit of a jump in my opinion, and then going from having it basically be like midway to back here is definitely a little bit of jump. I feel like when I watched the super attack that was kind of noticeable, but I mean it's not the worst that I've ever seen, right? This one even so maybe a little bit, but definitely not like as bad as that one from just before. However, what I have to say about this is that this shot right here is super sick when they actually launch their attacks, right? Throwing them forward, I feel like both of these are very well animated, right? And both of the attacks actually firing off are very well animated. And not only that, one thing I was very impressed with here was the lighting, right? Let's go from the frame where they have them above their head. You can see that there is this red, right, that even kind of reflects onto Ice's skin, right, which is really cool. And the lighting actually looks like it's brighter up on Nova's head. And then when they both launch the attack, you can see the lighting change drastically to reflect the actual energy that is being blasted forward. I think that's a really cool attention to detail, especially since even when this is sped up, right, you can see that it's not really on screen for that long. Then, of course, we have them launch their attacks, and you can see even the lighting is the same with the smaller versions of them kind of far away, which is pretty cool to see that they obviously kept that detail in. We have this explosion effect on Goku with a little bit of white, and you can see that there are all these rocks floating around, and I believe, yeah, that is actually the end. Their super attacks are a lot shorter than Gotenks and Piccolo's, but to be fair, Gotenks and Piccolo do have two, so hydrate or dihydrate, by the way. All right. So let's go ahead and watch the first super attack animation. I believe this is the one. Yes, this is the very funny one. So the step forward looks good. I love this minimal movement, by the way, that they have, where you can actually see they kind of recoil a little bit when they put their foot down, right? They actually have the impact of their leg hitting the ground. I like that a lot. This looks so good, by the way. This looks like it's ripped straight out of Dragon Ball Z, especially Piccolo's face to me. I don't know, something about it just looks like it's perfectly Buu Saga. It looks really good. I like this shot a lot, by the way, even though it is unfortunate that they kind of use this ghosting effect that I'm not really necessarily a fan of. I think that at least for this section, it does give this effect that both of them are like, you know, getting really ready to like actually scream their lungs out, right? Really elongating their bodies, right? I think it kind of gives that effect that they're like really prepping themselves for it. So at least if they're going to use it, they're using it like that. It is kind of interesting too that they go from these assets, which are very high quality and obviously very close up, to then having it be a little bit more of a far away shot here once they go from or once they fade from white, right? Because you can see that these assets are not necessarily like bad quality, but obviously they're just not as, you know, high quality, and they're not as, you know, close-up shots, not as detailed as well as the assets from just a moment ago. They look a lot more simplistic, right? A lot less detail and a lot less shading. But we do have them bring their bodies down to scream. Interestingly enough, for this particular shot, GOTENKS didn't have any ghosting that I saw, but as you can see, Piccolo actually does here when he's moving down, but GOTENKS doesn't. So I don't know why that's the case. That's really weird to me that like one of them would and one of them wouldn't. It's also kind of funny that Piccolo screams a frame before GOTENKS. I don't know why that's the case where that happens with him and not GOTENKS, but you know, it is what it is, I suppose. However, I definitely like this shot a lot. I think the movement is pretty clean. And obviously the scream is very nice. It's cool that they included the detail of GOTENKS' Obi belt flowing in the wind there as well. Obviously, the motion lines definitely help the scene, and GOTENKS' aura too. It looks really good overall. I really like this shot. And then of course, we fade to white, get the card art, which looks really good. I love the colors on the card art, by the way. They definitely did a good job with that for sure. And as you can see, this shot is really interesting to me. I don't know why. When I first saw this shot, I thought that this was just a really interesting one, because I feel like they don't do this close-up shots really when it comes to Dokkan stuff, right? But we have this super fantastic shot of GOTENKS' eyes growing, and this super great ba-dum kind of shot, right? Where it's like this intense realization, and the motion lines and of course the motion blur on the edges really giving a nice effect to GOTENKS here. And of course, talk to him! I love this screenshot so much. I really hope that this becomes the next Dokkan meme. I need somebody to edit out this text and edit in the talk to him text, because I think that would be so funny. But yeah, this shot overall looks really great. I love the way that this is constructed, right? From this beginning sort of like introductory shot that establishes what's about to happen to the fade to white. A lot of fades to white in this essay for some reason. I don't know why. I haven't really seen that many in a long time. GOTENKS' face come into frame. The key looks really great here too, by the way, and I love the fact that they just have this instant transition because it works perfectly for what the scene is trying to portray. And then of course the shout. It's cool to see that in the beginning of this, actually before the electricity kind of spawns in here, right, they actually have this, right, which almost may even work better for the talk to him meme. But nonetheless, like, it's supposed to be like the actual like sound coming out of GOTENKS' mouth before we then have the crazy electricity effect and the air, right, kind of pushing out of him with the scream, right? It's really good, and I love the way this is illuminated. It looks fantastic. Very nice effect here, right? This whole shot looks really good for sure. I love that they have his tongue move as well, and you can see his teeth and his hair are moving a little bit too, which is cool. We have this attack that of course blasts the enemy backwards with a little explosion there, and I love the little energy that dissipates as well from the blast. I think that that is a very nice little touch there. And what's cool is that obviously we have this shot with the portal exploding out of the energy, and of course the same effect that we saw coming out of GOTENKS' mouth onto the lookout. And this shot is great, right? We Piccolo's face here in the back is fantastic. And obviously we have GOTENKS come into the frame, right? Looking very excited that they were able to escape the hyperbolic time chamber. Very, very nice. I do wish that GOTENKS was a little bit more animated here, because it does kind of look like he basically just slides in as a PNG, right? Which I kind of wish it was a little bit more looking like he was actually taking a step towards the hole. But nonetheless, it's cool. I also like the effect that they have for the actual, like, you know, rift here, the little rip in space-time. Very, very cool. But yeah, GOTENKS' moving here is okay. There is a lot of ghosting effects on this that I've seen, right? You can see that his mouth kind of ghosts a little bit. Where did that go? Hold on. I know for a fact I saw it. Yeah, here you can see the ghosting on his body, right? As he kind of moves a little bit, right? There's a little bit of it right there where it kind of looks dirty for a second before it just looks like a little bit of a cleaner shot. Very interesting, right? But definitely not too bad. Obviously not something that you're probably going to notice anyway, since it's just such a simplistic thing. And this is actually a KO screen too, which is cool. And it will be animated with the actual rift there. So very, very nice. All right, the final super attack that we have to take a look at today. First of all, hydrate. Before we get into the actual animation here, I gotta say, I really, really like the coloring on GOTENKS here. This is very Boo Saga style-esque. I definitely really, really like the look of this. I think it looks absolutely fantastic, if I do say so myself. Definitely a very, very good look for GOTENKS for sure. Yeah, my man stands up, which all of this animation I think actually looks really, really good. It's very fluid to me, right? And that quick pose change is exactly where it needs to be, right? This is the type of animation that I would love to see in more animations in Dokkan. And not to mention, even so, they have his hair obviously move a little bit, right? This is the type of thing that I'm looking for. I think this is a lot less choppy looking than even just like some of the shots from Ice and Nova, right? Especially the little section of movement from Nova. But yeah, we have him give the little crabby hands for the electricity effect. Again, the coloring looks really good. I will say, unfortunately, after that, there is a little bit of a yucky changing with the posing. I don't think this to this is too bad. But then, of course, we have an immediate ghost. I'm going ghost! To then this pose here, which I wish there was a little bit more of a better transition between this shot. But nonetheless, still looks pretty good. And obviously, we have GOTENKS lift his hands to make the funny donut. Again, I really like the change in the coloring here. Obviously, this sort of, I don't even know what you would call it. I guess just like very saturated sort of colors here. And then, of course, as the effect is made, you have this very desaturated version of GOTENKS, which is cool. Again, really focusing on that coloring. And, of course, we have the donuts shoot off, right, to then surround the enemy sprite, which looks really good. And, of course, makes the volleyball, which then GOTENKS catches. Again, very fluid animation in a lot of sections of this one, which is really cool to see, right? Like, even as they both ready up, right, as it's coming towards them, you can see Piccolo moves a little bit. Even GOTENKS is sort of readying up to catch it, and then obviously as he does, you know, he actually feels the impact a little bit. And you can see Piccolo does kind of change positions a little bit here, but I think it's a little bit more understandable because obviously, you know, he's shocked that he turned him into the volleyball. This shot is so good, by the way. Classic GOTENKS right here. I think this is animated very, very nicely. And I will say, I actually quite like this transition just going from this to this. I think this is a pretty good cut, if I do say so myself. Obviously, the zoom out is great. I love his face is so funny. But obviously, very, very anime accurate. And I love the way that his mouth and his eyes move here because I think they look great. Even though it's just a quick change, right? I think it looks really, really good and works well for this scene for sure. Then we have him actually get ready to throw the volleyball. I think from here, right, where he actually then sort of changes to here, I think that that cut is actually pretty good because I feel like it makes a lot of sense in my mind. Interestingly enough, too, they're changing from this more detailed asset to this one that's a little bit lower quality, but I still feel like it flows pretty well. However, I wish there was like one more frame in between this one and this one where he's bringing his arms down. However, after that, besides this ghosting effect, you know, I'm not really a fan of. I think the rest of the movement is pretty alright for this section. Definitely not too bad. And then we finally have Piccolo get ready to catch the volleyball. I think this scene with Piccolo is animated very, very well. There's maybe only like one thing in here that I could nitpick, right? Going from this to this maybe. But it is definitely a good way to go to a shocked expression, right? Changing that very quickly. Definitely looks pretty good overall, I think. And then obviously we have GOTENKS toss the volleyball up in the air and actually hit it with a very nice impact frame. I think the full motion on the volleyball hit looks good. Piccolo also hitting it back looks super fluid to me, right? I think this entire sequence of them hitting the volleyball back and forth looks really, really good. Even the first time I saw it, I was pretty impressed, honestly. We have GOTENKS power up and fly forward, which is a great angle. The funny legs moving as well with this particular shot where GOTENKS is flying up towards the sky, sort of like, you know, trying to almost push himself like he's swimming in the air, right? Which is a nice little touch there for sure. And then we have the ball slam down, which again, I think this is a perfect pose change to really emphasize how quickly he's moving and obviously slapping the ball down right away, right? And you can even see the ball has this frame here where you can see it takes the impact and it kind of morphs a little bit, right? Almost like it's made out of rubber or a soft material, which is cool to see. And a very nice pose change that is pretty much masked perfectly by all of these crazy effects, right? Basically going from this to this, you don't even really notice the change until obviously, you know, it's kind of already in your face because of all the electricity effects, which is great. And GOTENKS has a little bit of slight movement, not just his hair here, but his body moves just a little bit. You can see it kind of tilt. Very, very nice attention to detail. This is what I always love to see. The clouds look really good here for some reason. I don't know why the clouds look so nice in this particular section, but this is just like very nice looking clouds. The sky does get darker as the volleyball flies towards the ground, and the little explosion effect looks pretty good as it smacks down. And then, of course, we have the parting of the clouds, which, again, I don't know why, but they popped off with the cloud animation here. For some reason, the cloud animation just looks really good. I love the way that it opens up to the scene below. And obviously, we have GOTENKS fly down and float over the ball, given his funny laugh, obviously being victorious in this super attack. I do kind of wish that this transition to this was a little bit more fluid, because obviously there's this big ghosting effect here. But nonetheless, oh, I don't know why my screen has a little blue edges there. Let me see if I can get that. Yeah, I don't know why. For some reason, sometimes the background gets a little bit wonky when I put it in full screen, and then when I take it out, it just decides to show the edges a little bit, so I apologize about that. But yeah, then basically it's just the end. We have GOTENKS laughing, and this will also be the KO screen, which is pretty cool that this unit actually ended up getting 2 KO screens to his name. But that is going to do it for these super attack animations. Overall, I think both of these are pretty solid. I think for the most part, GOTENKS' animations are definitely a lot more solid than Nuova and Ice's, right? Well, GOTENKS and Piccolo, of course. I think that they just have a lot more fluid movement. And even though obviously Ice and Nova's is still pretty good, I think it's little things like that that really make an essay for me personally. But I like both of these a lot. I think they look pretty good, and they did a good job, I feel like, with both of these, emphasizing the fact that both of these units are present, right? Even though there is a clear focus on the 2 more popular characters, right? Of course, being Nuova and GOTENKS compared to, you know, Piccolo and Ice in the background, because they're like not relegated to the background, but they're almost more like supporting characters while still being present for a lot of the cards. So it's cool that they really emphasize that in the animations for these 2 units. But definitely let me know what you think of these guys in the comment section below. I would be very curious to hear your thoughts. Hopefully I can pull this GOTENKS, because I did get an Ice and Nuova, but I actually did not pull him in my anniversary summon. So maybe going forward I will be able to cop the boy. But of course, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let me know if you pulled these guys too. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed and you want to see more content like this. And with that, I will catch you guys in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.